Hello everyone, so in this video I'm going to show you how to create line graphs as well as bar graphs in Excel, and I'm also going to show you how to download the Microsoft Suite, including Word, Excel, PowerPoint, free through PLU. So to download Excel, the first thing I recommend doing is going to your search bar and typing in Pacific Lutheran University Microsoft Suite, and then look for the link that says Software Licenses, Pacific Lutheran University. You might have to scroll through with different browsers that appears in different locations. I'm using Etosha, which is a little different from Google, which is a little different from Bing. So just scroll through until you see software licenses. And then click on that link, and it will take you to a page that looks like this. And there's some information about Microsoft Office 365 here. So you're able to actually download the Microsoft Office on up to 5 personal computers while you're attending PLU. And to do that, you'll press on this link here. And it will take you to the Office 365 education website. And you'll just type in your school address in this bar here. It does take a few days for everything to be finalized. So I recommend starting this earlier rather than later. Eventually you'll get some kind of access code in your school email, and you'll use that access code and the links on there to access a page that looks a lot like this. So this is a good video to reference if you want to know a little bit more about how to download everything. The video is called How to Get Office 365 Free for Students. You can also reach out to our Information and Technology Services department, and their information is listed here. So if you shoot them an email at its@plu.edu, they'll be able to help you out as well. You can also call them over the phone. But once you're taken to this page, this shows you all of the Office 365 apps that are available. I recommend actually downloading the apps onto your computer and getting the desktop version, because they work a bit differently and, in my opinion, a bit better than the online versions. So to do that, you'll go up to this little blue Install Office link here, and you'll click that, and it will download everything to your computer. And once you've done that, then you'll be able to open Excel like normal. All right, so I just pulled up an Excel document. This data was kindly provided by Dr. Smith, and this information talks about LH as well as estrogen, and how rats that have their ovaries taken out have different concentrations of LH in response, or compared to rats that have been treated with estrogen. So this information is very interesting in my opinion, and we will not be covering it in 225. However, if you are interested in reproduction and hormones, I recommend you take Biology of Reproduction with Dr. Smith. It's a J-term class, and I took it and really enjoyed it. So there's a little plug for you. So don't worry about understanding these concepts. We just want you to understand how to create line graphs and bar graphs. So the first thing I like to do when I have information like this is, first, if I'm inputting the data, I like to make sure that my X values are at the top and that they're put in horizontally. So X values would be our independent variable, so the thing that will not change according to the dependent variable. So, you know, time will continue to go on like normal no matter what. The LH concentration in rats is not going to change time. So that's why time is our independent variable. And anytime you see time, it is our independent variable. We'll go in the x-axis. So I am going to clean up the data a little bit in a way that I like to see it. If this doesn't feel right to you, no need to do it. I just like to look at something that's a little cleaner and color coded. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I like to bold all of this information in our what will become our x-axis and y-axis information. And then all the data points I leave unbolded. I also like to merge cells together just so I can tell what it's referencing. And I like to color code. So I'm going to color code this group up here, which is our OVX rats, which are the rats that have had their ovaries taken out. And then I will color code this section down here, the estrogen treated rats, in a different color. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and speed through this. Follow along in your own document if you find that helpful. If not, just leave it as is. Okay, now I've cleaned up all the data in the way I like to see it. The next thing we want to do is we want to calculate the mean, which is also known as the average. And what's nice is Excel will do this for you. So if you type in equals and then start typing out the word average and double click on that link there, and then select the data that you want it to average. Make sure you are not including the 0 for the time, just the actual data points. It will calculate the mean for you. And then if you click on this cell and you click on a little green box in this corner here and drag it over, it will automatically fill everything in for the other time points, which is very handy. For standard deviation, you can also type in equations. So if you just type in equals STDEV, you'll be able to find a lot of different options. I would just stick with the standard STDEV, double click, select the data you'd like, type enter, and then again you can drag it over. Then we're going to do that again for this group of data. All right, so now we're going to put all of this data into one table. So we're going to move the mean and standard deviations from both groups into one table. You can do this in a variety of different ways. You can group the means together, or you can group the OVX and the E-treated, which is what I'm going to choose to do. So again, I like to keep my independent variable in the horizontal position. So I'm just going to paste this down here like that. Make it a little more neutral color. However, if you do want to put it vertically in, you can copy it, and then when you go to paste it in a cell, you right click and you can click on underneath the paste options, you can click on transpose and it'll flip it for you. So if that's something you prefer, you can go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to put our first group up here. So this is going to be our OVX stats. We have 2 points to go. So we have mean as well as standard deviation. And then we also have our E-treated. And we also have a mean and standard deviation for these. If the letters run over into the next cell, you can just expand it by double clicking on this line here. You can also choose to wrap the text. I'm going to once again clean this up. You'll see a pattern with me. I like to do that. All right, now we can copy this information down here. So you can just select all of this, Control C. And then when you paste, make sure you right click and click on values under the paste options. If you don't click on values, it will copy down the equation and that will actually change your values. You want to make sure you click on values. I'm also going to make sure to highlight the mean sections because that's what we're going to be putting into our graph first. So I can grab the right button. I guess I'm going to highlight that one. And that one. And I'm just going to make this purple, so a darker purple, just so it matches. Okay, so now we can actually get to inserting our graph. So we're just going to focus on this information down here. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm then going to head over to insert and go over to the charts options and the scatter. So if you click on the little arrow there, then I would include the scatter plot with outlines. So not this one, but just the little dots. It's going to be blank when you first input it, which is exactly what you want. Then you will right click and select data. And from here, you're going to add a category. The first will be our OVX rats. The X values are going to include our time points, so 0 through 90. And our Y values are the mean that we calculated for each of these time periods. So not the standard deviation that will be used for error bars later, but the mean. Press OK, and you'll see the little dots appear in our graph. We're going to add one more group because we also have E-treated rats. And I should mention that you will be creating graphs in this class where you have 4 lines, and it follows the same process. Just make sure you have 4 sets of data in this chart here. And when you're adding different data sets in, you'll have 4 instead of 2. Okay, for the X values, once again, they should be the same for all of your lines. So it's going to be our time. And I like to grade everything in the boxes, just make sure everything goes smoothly. Sometimes Excel gets a little finicky. And then we have the mean for the E-treated rats. Press OK, and everything is inserted. And again, you'll have 4 here, or a different number, but I believe it's 4 in the experiment that I'm thinking of that you'll be graphing. And you'll just press OK. And you'll see this is a pretty bare-boned graph, so there's a couple of things we need to do to it. First, I'm just going to change the colors to match. So if you select the little points here, it'll highlight which data that's from. So this is from our OVX rats. So we want to make it purple. So if you right-click on that, you'll see that there's a fill button. And I'm going to make it purple. There's also an outline, which is the ring around. So I'm going to click purple as well. What you'll notice is that a line does pop up. We don't want this line, so I'm going to double click on it. It'll pull up this little option bar over here. If you go to the paint bucket and press no line, you got to make sure you're selecting all the points there. All right, let's try that again. No line, and then they all go. So that's pretty good. Then I'm also going to insert a key just so I don't forget. So if you go over to chart design and you'll be clicking on the chart and add chart element, then you can include a legend. I like to put it to the right, but you can put it wherever you'd like as long as it's on the graph somewhere. I'm next going to insert some axes, or axis titles, so we know what's on the x-axis and what's on the y-axis. So again, go to add chart element. This button is going to be your best friend making graphs. So axis title, horizontal. So here, this is our time in minutes. And then up here, this will be our LH concentration, and that I believe is in nanograms per milliliter. And we always want to make sure we include the units in parentheses so we know what we're measuring in. I also just like to bold the axis titles. So you click on them, go to home, and press bold. Just so they stand out a little bit. There is no need to insert a title. I would actually recommend that you don't insert a title because we will be inserting a figure legend, which is actually different from this, even though Excel calls this a legend. What we refer to as a figure legend is basically a caption. So to do that, you'll press insert and then text and text box. And you'll put it down here. You could also just do this in Word because you'll copy your graph over to a Word document, and right below it you can type the figure caption, but I find it's a little bit easier just to do it while still in Excel, and that way I don't forget it. So you'll type figure 1 and bold that and put a little period afterwards, since this is the first figure that we're making. Figure captions just include a little information about what's happening in this figure. and they should be able to stand alone. So if I was just looking at this and not your paper, I should be able to understand what's happening there. And you'll learn more about this skill as the semester progresses and we'll provide some feedback. So I'm not going to fill that in right now, but make sure you do include them on every single figure/graph that you make in this class. Same goes for tables. If you're including tables in lab reports, they should have a figure legend, which is a table legend, but we put them above if it's a table. But if it's a figure, which includes graphs, it goes below. And you should learn about that in Pachetic, which is one of the books that you have for this course. So no title because there's a figure legend that orients you to what's happening in the figure. The next thing I would do is I would insert a trend line, at least for the information that you're looking at. This one's a little all over the place, so I don't think I would necessarily insert a trend line normally for this, but in your data, you're going to want to. So again, we'll go over the chart design, our best friend, add chart element, and then go down to trend line, and we'll click on linear. And make sure you're selecting the data points when you're doing that. We'll do this for this one as well. And then if you click on the lines, you can change the color as well as the dashes. I personally like a solid line. I just think it's a little bit easier to see the color, which means you know which line goes with which data points, but it's up to your discretion. You're not going to be docked points for using a dashed line. So I'm just going to change these. So if you go over to this little paint icon, you can click on dash type and just click solid. You'll see that it also pops up in your little figure legend here. See that, and what's confusing is this is referred to as a legend as well as this. When we are referring to figure legends in class, it will always be this caption-like thing down here. So if you click on this and you make sure it's just around this little section, you can then press backspace on your keyboard and it will delete that because you don't need it in this little figure legends here. So the final thing I would do before I would call this complete is we need to actually include error bars because we calculated standard deviation and we want to do something with that, right? So we're going to once again click on the data points that you want, then go over to add chart element, and we're going to include error bars. In this case, we're going to do a custom error bar since we calculated the standard deviation. So we'll press more. It'll take you over here, and then you're going to, there we go. Then you're going to go over to the bars, not the paint bucket, press custom, and make sure you specify the value. So we're going to delete anything that's in this box, and then we're going to select everything for our OVX rep, since that's our purple, and the standard deviation. And the same goes for the negative errors, which is just going to be the bottom of it, whereas positive is above. And we want it to be, the standard deviation should be on both sides. So press OK. What you'll notice is there's actually little tiny horizontal ones too. If I blow this up, you can select those and just press backspace and it'll get rid of those because we do not need the horizontal error bars, just the vertical ones. Then we're going to do the same thing for the estrogen treated dots. So we gotta press chart design, add chart element, and then error bars, more error bar options, custom, specify value, and once again, we're going to insert our values that we calculated up here. All right. And then I like to change the colors of the bars just once again so I know what's what, because you'll see that some of them cross and it's sometimes hard to tell. So I will go over to the paint icon and press color and then add the corresponding color in. And then I would call this graph complete. So you want to make sure you have error bars when applicable, as well as a trend line when applicable. You want to make sure that you have axes titles always. You'll actually notice that that was kind of cutting off our title there. So I just shifted the actual graph. So if you select just this inner part, you can move it around like so. If you want to be able to read everything. But so you see how that's cutting off the 2.5. I'm just going to slide it over. So axis titles with units. You also want to make sure that you have a figure legend, and if you have multiple groups or series, that they are listed to the side over here. And that's everything for a line graph. Now for a bar graph, we have some different data. This is for carbon dioxide production in fire-bellied toads as well as crested geckos. Again, we won't do this experiment, but we will look at respiration in crabs, which is kind of a fun ride. So once again, I'm going to clean up this data, and I will be right back. All right, so that I've cleaned it up, we're then going to solve for the mean and the standard deviation in the same way. I'm sorry, you do not type in mean, you type in average for the mean. And then select the data. And once again, you can drag it over to solve for the next column. All right, and if you do want to adjust the number of sig figs, which is just the number of decimal places here, you can select the cell, and then you can change it using these buttons here. So it doesn't really matter in this case where we don't normally have you include the table that you use to produce your graph, just your graph in the final results in your lab report. But if you need to know how to do it, that's how you do that. All right, so now that we've done that, the next step is to put it in a table that Excel can put into a graph in an easily accessible way. We only have one little group here of mean and standard deviation for one point. We're not looking at it over time, so we don't need to put it all in a graph like this because we've had both of these. This one will do just fine. However, I do recommend moving the titles or the fire-bellied toad and the crested gecko titles down here, just so Excel knows to put those in as labels into your graph, because the bar graphs are a little finicky with labels. And so once it looks like this, then I would select this region, not including the standard deviation, just the mean, and go over to insert, and then you can add a chart. You can add a chart like we did before by just inserting an empty one and then selecting the data, but this is another way to go about doing it. The reason I didn't do this in the other example was because I had the standard deviation placed in between each of the means, and you want to make sure the standard deviation is not part of your graph. It should just be there to create error bars. But in this case, the standard deviation is at the bottom, and I don't have to worry about it when creating the bar graphs. So bar graphs are up here. In this class, we should always use this clustered column here. We don't generally stack the columns. And you'll see that it's labeled this one as fire-bellied toad and this one as crested gecko, which is perfect. When those labels are not there, it just labels them as 1 and 2 by default. We don't need a title, so this can be deleted, which again, you can just select it and press backspace and it'll get rid of it for you. I am going to change the colors. So our fire-bellied toad is perfect, but this crested gecko needs to be yellow. Also, when selecting the bars, make sure you're just selecting one when you want to change the color. So if you click on it once, it selects both. If you click on it a second time, it chooses just that one for you. Then make it yellow. Then I would insert my axis styles. So in this case, I personally am not too particular when I'm grading about having an axis title down here. because these serve pretty well as access titles, but if you'd like, you can include one, and in this case, it could be reptiles. However, you definitely need one on the y-axis to know what you're measuring. So we can say CO2 production, and units, so millimeters per. Normally we would have a unit down here, but in this case, it doesn't really apply. That's why I say that this isn't incredibly necessary. So you can include it or not. I probably wouldn't in my own graph. For CO2 production, the two we do like to put as a subscript. To do that, just select it, go to home, click this little arrow here, and then select subscript and press OK. It is preferable that you include subscripts and superscripts when applicable. All right, on this one, we don't need to include a little legend over here with this series because it's labeled right underneath fire belly toad and crested gecko. We do still need a figure legend though, so if we need to insert a text box. When you're copying these over to Word, you can just copy them like normal, select it, right click, press copy or Control C, and then when you paste it, you should have a couple different options. So you should be able to just paste the visual, or you can paste it and link it to this Excel sheet. So when the Excel sheet is changed or updated, then it will change it in the Word document. Either one is fine, whatever works for you. Yeah, so in this case, this one would be figure 2 if both of these figures were going into one lab report. And again, you would write some information about what's happening within this graph. And I'm going to label these axes. And then the last thing to include is our error bars, which is what we're going to use our standard deviation for. So once again, click on the chart, go to chart design, add chart element and error bars once again. And we still want to do custom ones. So we'll go back over to this custom section. And in this case, we're going to select the standard deviation for both of these, which is a little different from the line graph. For the line graph, normally you just select it for the one group. So like fire belly toad, and then select it separately for crested gecko. In bar graphs, you select all of the standard deviations you have. All right, and it's inserted that for us. It's kind of hard to tell that they are different because these numbers are so similar. But if, for example, I were to change this value to 5, you will see that it just applies to this crested gecko and not to the fire belly toad. So they are individual standard deviations in this line graph. So I hope that helped. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email your instructor or to email your TA, which in this case is me. So good luck.